understand in the beginning that he wanted to put out the actual bootlegs as a record.
Okay, so tell me about the task, the things that these multiple times you went up, and what all transpired. And
well, so apparently what they were doing was trying to negotiate with David Lee Roth about which songs to include, and he would come back and say, Roth wants to get weird stuff like David Bowie, Genie, and these weird covers, that are up his alley. And they were like, whatever. And in my mind, of course, the sound quality of all these was just not up to par for broadcast quality for a Van Halen record. I mean, for a bootleg, it's fine. And, maybe even a documentary, it's fine, but, not for a record. So I'm not going to say that out loud. It's their deal. So, he starts off by saying, okay, you've given me all this. And then he's going through different angles. So it's like, first off, he finds out that David Lee Roth has his own mini collection and this really weird early stuff. Like, I guess Van Halen used to have a keyboard player in there when they first got Roth, and they still had Mark Stone. And they played these weird songs like Gentlemen of Leisure and some other song that apparently these were bootlegs that Roth was holding, and he somehow put them on his radio show, but not in their entirety. And everyone made a copy of that, and that's what came out. And so Edward was like, do you have the whole song? All I have is this half of the song. I go, no, I got the same source as you. I never had that. So then he would move on to a different approach. And finally it came down to, he goes, well, bring the Pasadena Hilton one. You got that? And I said, I got a super master clean copy of that. So I'd give him that. And then it came down to the one we like the best is the original tape that I've told you about from the very beginning. In fact, I had my own little nickname for that first demo I got in 1979. I called it GOLVH, Good Old Live Van Halen. So with my guitar buddies that we would listen to this stuff, we'd always refer to that original bootleg as GOLVH. And it was basically, it was some Broderick demos, but there was one live show in there. I think it was January of 75. And it was them playing at what could be Gazzari's. We're not sure, but they're playing really well. And Michael Anthony, especially, I think he had just gotten in the band and he was just jamming his ass off. They were doing Can't Get Enough, from Bad Company. And they start jamming out and Edward's just flailing. He's just super on fire and tasty. And same thing with Michael Anthony. He's like, he's just going off like I've never heard him play. And it's really loud and clear on the tape. And so it's really a great bootleg. And they decided that's the one we want to put out. He goes, do you have that one? I go, you're in luck. I have the original master tape. And so he goes, okay, make us a copy. And he's sitting there with Ross Hogarth. And I said, well, ask Ross what format. I can make it all the way up to 192 kilohertz at 24-bit. And then Ross goes, no, make it 188 because that's, related to 44, not 48. So okay, great. 188 it is. So I go into my studio, align the tape deck, make this totally clean copy, bring it over there. Before they even messed with it, I come over to Edward's house to bring this over, right? This clean copy I made. And as I drive up, there's another car coming up at the same time. It's Al. Al's coming over at the same time I am. And he looks over at me and he goes, so this tape you got, this is the mother. Yeah, it is. This is the original, the cleanest master you can possibly get. And I made the cleanest copy. And so we take it. I give the disc to Ed. He runs into the computer, which is in a whole other part of the studio, not in the control room. So he has to run all the way over into his studio to put the DVD-R that I made of the session in there. He puts it back, shows up on the screen of his Pro Tools. I open the session, I open the thing, and I put it on. It starts coming out his big old main speakers. Sounds amazing. I don't even know what's powering those mains, but I'm guessing about 5,000 watts because it's the cleanest thing ever. And Al's listening to it. And he goes, oh my God, this is clean. This is good. He goes, Ed, give him a pen and paper right now. So Al's like giving me orders, and I was like, oh shit. Okay, write this down. All right, what's the first one? What's the second one? So I'm writing down 1, 2, 3, 4. Can't get enough. James Gang. I'm writing it all down, and then they start asking me questions or interrupting me. So I'm like, I start writing it down, but I wrote the number 5 twice. So they go, all right. So how many songs do we have on here? I said 9. He goes, I thought it was 8. I go, oh shit, I wrote the number 5 twice. He goes, well, I guess we're not going to let you run our books then, are we? So Al is just he's strict, but he's funny, So,
right.
So they were super jazzed about how clean this tape was, and they were like all excited. And then they took it to Ross, I should say, and Ross did all he could in his Pro Tools to balance it better. The problem was the bass drum and the bass guitar were like super present, like really loud in the mix. The voice was kind of low, which is okay because David Lee Roth wasn't singing that great. He was okay, but it just wasn't his best performance. So I thought it was a great sounding tape, but still, I don't know if you want to put this out, but they were convinced they did want to put it out. So I was like, okay. So that's when Ross Hogarth was making that remark. He goes, I just can't lower this kick drum in this mix no matter what I do. And I said, well, the kick drum sounds great. Why do you want? He goes, oh, well, we'll tell him Mike Wolf said the kick drum sounds great. What are we going to say? I was like, okay, don't be blaming me about the kick drum. So, so they did what they could. And then Ross cleaned it up. And then they took it to a very expensive mastering studio. I'm sure they spent thousands of dollars there having that guy do what he could to maximize it. And then in the end, they just thought, we can't, it's not going to be a record. Sorry. I mean, it was only about, 22 minutes anyway, like one side of a record, of an old school record. I don't think it was enough for an album. So, it was a lot of effort wasted for, thinking that that's what they were going to release, which part of me was like proud that they were going to take this tape I've been holding on to and make it their record. But the other part of me as a producer engineer was saying, this is a mistake, this isn't up to snuff. So in the end, they did what they did, and they, I didn't even hear how it happened, but they decided to use these on the road recordings from Japan. And then they had to get David Lee Roth to approve which ones, which nights and all that, and which songs. And they finally got an agreement. And then that's what they put out. And then Ross Hogarth said he wanted no part to do with any of this. He didn't think it was up to snuff. And they got Bob Clearmountain, who's better engineer than everyone. He's like one of the best guys around. He's the one who did Michael Jackson. So, it's good for what it was. It was a better choice than my bootleg. As a producer engineer, I'd say they made the right decision.
Okay.
As a fan, I'd say it's okay. It's okay. It is what it is.
Well, they can always release it later as a, whatever they're going to do with all this other stuff.
Yeah, no, it's not going to come out. What do you think? Wolfgang's going to preside over that decision? No, there's nothing more coming out of those guys.
You think nothing else?
So.
No,
I don't think so. No.
So
it's like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
it's like Led Zeppelin.
So Al's not going to go back in the archive and.
I think Roth announced he's officially retired. Those Las Vegas dates, Ed and I used to text each other. That was the other thing, is that after these initial 5 times of me helping out, trying to do this record, we stayed in touch on text message. And I have this whole, 4 years worth, I think, 6 years worth of text messages that I can look back on, or just between me and him. And he would tell me like little things he's going through, and the struggle with the health and all that. But a lot of it was complaining about Dave and how he was really mad that Dave was just kind of foiling any ambition that Ed had to get back out there, or to put out a record, or even to tour, And we would talk about, how that and not only was Dave sounding the way he was sounding, but he refused to rehearse with them. He refused to write anything. He didn't want to even that that live Tokyo tapes thing. He didn't even go in to repair anything. He could have done some post production and fixed it up like some of these live albums. He didn't want to do any of that. So Ed was kind of bummed, and then he was starting to say things like, "Yeah," he goes, "nobody's interested in any of our new stuff anyway. It's like all they care about is the old stuff, and I can see Roth's point now, and it's like that was sad to hear."
Yeah, well, Different Kind of Truth did good though.
Well, Different Kind of Truth is one thing, but that last one, the Tokyo thing, that was sort of just whatever.
Yeah, I know when Ed said that. He said that in an article in another interview for, I think, Guitar World, where he said that he was, maybe that was before Different Kind of Truth came out, but yeah, he was sort of, feeling like they were, people wouldn't listen to the new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like people want to hear the old stuff. Ed would share all kinds of stuff, like the stories about Sammy and why they broke up, and how they were really kind of envious of his whole tequila deal, which originally Sammy had offered them a equal share of. And I heard that whole story directly from Alex. It's like I guess when they opened Cabo Wabo, that was like a hang for them. It was Sammy's sort of idea because he had been going there, and they built that nightclub, and then they split everything 4 ways, just like Van Halen had always done on all their records. And Sammy, they did the same thing with, a real bro deal, But apparently the nightclub down there was losing money initially, and Alex was getting pissed. And then Sammy says, "Well, we got to pay these city officials." And Alex was like, "What, is that a bribe?" And Sammy's like, "No, it's just some taxes." And then Al would say, "Well, I thought you only have to pay taxes on profits. We're not making any profits." And then pretty soon Sammy was like, "Hey man, I don't want any bad vibes here. I'll just give you back your money. I'll just buy your share out, call it a day." And then Al's like, "Sure, man. Yeah. I was thinking this would be different." So I don't know if Sam knew about the tequila already or whether that happened later, but apparently someone down there and hooked up with him, and Sammy, as put out this Cabo Wabo tequila, and eventually that was sold to Seagram's for like $80 million. And Al and Ed were kicking themselves. They're just like,
right. There was a lot of bad blood on that whole deal. I think they felt like that he kind of knew and kind of backdoored him, but I don't know what the real truth is behind that, but yeah.
Who knows? I mean, they aren't great businessmen, and Sammy's obviously a way better businessman. Those guys are just purely musicians.
That you were talking about this earlier about Zeppelin, and we were talking about it off camera, but these guys, I mean, maybe you can enlighten the world and answer this from what you can. The vibe that you had when you were with Edward, what you talked about, and Alex, and the business side of this, they were always reluctant to, cash in, I guess is the word, but this goes back to the 80s when Edward first started doing Kramer guitars. He was very reluctant to not only produce things that people like these guitars that we all made, he didn't want to give those things away. We were talking about this earlier, how he would throw people off his trail because he didn't like that. And at some point when he became very famous in the 80s, he could have cashed in more, but it just didn't seem like it was something he wanted to do. Even back in the Kramer era, he did it. But now, at the end of his life, of course, EVH, the brand, was a huge business. But
right.
But as far as their archive, as far as their legacy, you said it a minute ago, these guys may never put out anything else ever again. That may be it.
Yeah. They've already released they've already remastered the early catalog, and I don't really see it. Again, it's like I'm speculating, of course. What do I know? I'm just, lucky enough.
Did you ever ask Edward? Did you ever say, "Why don't you put this out?" Or "Why don't you, have you not, these things, all this stuff.
I think from what I did pick up from conversations, it's like they didn't make all their own those kind of business decisions about marketing and releases and that kind of more executive stuff. They were only about controlling their own creativity and controlling their own band. As far as what happened to it after that and how it was sold and all that, I think they had a bad taste in their mouth about their early deal with Warner Brothers and how they were taken advantage of. And so they just, they kind of shied away from that stuff. And that's why I don't think they got involved in any of this, merchandising on a large extent and all these other ways to cash in. What they did cash in on was the concerts in the last 5 years. I mean, back in my day, I saw Led Zeppelin at the LA Forum for $8. That's how much a concert ticket cost then in 1977.
Sure.
And now it's like, if Led Zeppelin was still around, I don't know what it would cost, what, 500 or who knows? I mean, by the time I went to see Van Halen at the end, he goes, they don't even allow us a guest list. Even our family and friends, they all have to buy tickets.
Really?
So what I can offer you is like a $250 ticket and of course backstage passes. It had turned into such a money game that that's why they put up with Roth, is because they all wanted to cash in on those millions of dollars to be made on a tour. And, that was worth putting up with whatever. So
right.
That's where they did cash in on it, the concert tours. But as far as all that other kind of stuff like Sammy did, they're not on that level of thinking about that kind of stuff. I think they just had a bad taste in their mouth and they just didn't want to open themselves up for a bad deal again. That's my take.
Yeah, one of the things that if you watch the DVD that came with the different kind of truth CD, when they do these interviews with Roth and they're all sitting around talking and they mention this necklace because when they had the platinum party for their first album, they were given these platinum necklaces, which is what the merchandising was based on. Those platinum necklaces were then charged back to them and the party in the end. And then later, Noel Monk, who I had a lot of side conversations with before he passed, he details a lot in his book about how that Warner's deal went, what kind of deal he got them into eventually after he basically tricked Warner Brothers into missing the deadline on the re-sign. And, they definitely knew about that early couple years in their career. And I don't blame them. Who wants, business is not every musician. We know this in general. You know this because there's very few of us.
It's all a ripoff, man. It's like the Beatles got ripped off. The King Cobra thing was a ripoff. Every new band is going to get ripped off. That's just the way it is.
That's exactly the way it is. Yeah, I just put something out there not long ago about American Idol and that whole thing because a lot of people have a misconception of how that works behind the scenes with the contracts that people sign to be on those shows. They get a no compete, or they have to sit for 3 years after a show, or they have to cut them in, or they have to, there's a huge number of different aspects that happen to these young children. They're children, and if their parents aren't, and they don't have a lawyer. Somebody told me when I was in my 20s, because I had some friends who had gotten a record deal and they were trying to help us out. We were young kids, and trying to get a record deal in our 20s. They handed us their MCA contract and said, read this MCA contract. It'll help you out. And then somebody said, you need a music lawyer. And I'm like, dude, I'm working at Taco Bell. I mean, how am I going to afford a music lawyer, And this is what happens when you come into a business as a young person and you don't understand the business. You
don't understand. Yeah, exactly. It's like you get into it because you love the performing and you love the music. And if you could get famous, that's like a dream. That's the payoff, the fame, the confirmation, the world saying, I love you and I love your stuff. I mean, that's the payoff. All these other people are just the sharks that know the entertainment business and are going to take advantage of you. So, right. There's really no way out of it, and unfortunately, even that ripoff game is gone now. Now you can't even get ripped off at all. Now you have to put out your own music and get ripped off by Spotify by getting, a millionth of a penny on each play or whatever it is. It's like
sure, it makes that kind of look like the good old days. I mean,
the only big money left in rock and roll is, as we were saying, the concert tickets. That's the big money.
That's true. I was looking at some concert tickets for Styx here in a local venue, and it was like $200 for a regular seat, and not even a good seat, just a regular old seat.
Yeah, insane. And then all the little fees on top of that. Talk about greed.
It's insane. So let's kind of finish up with Edward. In general, you said he was just an open sweetheart of a guy. And
yes.
you caught him, kind of in his rise back from kind of a fall that happened in the early 2000s, which I saw, of course, and everybody saw. What was your impression? You said he gotten older and I guess he just gotten sober and felt better and was on a better track. I mean, ever since Roth and him reconvened in 2007, he seemed to be going on an upward, thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't get a chance to know him in that darker period, as you might want to call it, where I know he was struggling with the, addiction or alcoholism, whatever it was, and he went through a period where he was kind of drifting. I think he may have, like, at that point, I don't know enough about it to comment, but I think that's when he was sort of like off the rails, and then he found his way back on, and, became a much more conscientious person and not a scattered guy, but, someone who was, focused and self-disciplined. That's what I picked up on, is that he wasn't like some kind of ex-alcoholic or ex-drug addict that, was right on the verge of relapsing. He wasn't like that at all. He was totally relaxed. What he did continue to do was to smoke tobacco by vaping. I got a picture of him and I'll share it with you, where he's smoking a vapor thing, with his tobacco. So he never gave that up. And that's what did him in. He could talk all day long about metal guitar picks, but it was tobacco.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Where were you that day, and what was the last time you talked to him prior to his passing?
I had talked to him, for like the whole 6 years after those days when I was up there, mainly text messages. That's how we stayed in touch. And, I'd share about what's going on in my life and my family, and he'd do the same. And he'd share about his cancer up and down things. And I kept that all confidential. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Well, just that, your contact with him, and what was the last time you had contact?
Right. So in 2020, he started getting, much worse. And, even the text messages were very short, and I'd say, "How you feeling?" He goes, "Not good." And then, I said, "Well, I'll be praying for you." And he goes, "Thanks." And, you could tell he was in pain, and he was like laid up for a while. And I think a lot of things caught up with him all at the same time. The last thing that he had out of these different throat cancers and all these things that they had removed and successfully cured him of. But then all of a sudden a lung cancer showed up. And when he shared that with me, I was like, "Oh no." He goes, "Man, I got stage 4 lung cancer." I was like, "I'm so sorry to hear that. I have faith that you'll overcome it." He goes, "For sure I will." And then we were trying to joke about it. And I said, if you were a car that you need a new tranny and a new engine. He goes, this car's going to keep running. He goes, "This car's not going anywhere." And, we would joke about it. He always kept a sense of humor, and he only got really kind of a little bit down and a little bit lost on those very last few months. And then I knew something was up towards, when was the end? Was it like October of 2020?
October 6th.
Like that?
October 6th.
Starting that summer, he started, like, his communication was really spotty. And if he did reply, it would be a couple words. and I knew he was in trouble. And so I wrote him something. Probably the last thing I wrote him was, I don't know, a few months before October, and I never heard a reply. And then next thing I hear is he's gone.
Yeah,
it was horrible. It's like, it was like,
right.
I was devastated.
Where were you and what were you doing?
I was just doing my thing. I was living here in Huntington Beach. The pandemic was still on, so I'm pretty much working in the house. And, when I heard that, I was like, oh shit. It knocked me for a loop for like 2 or 3 days. I was talking to my old Pasadena friends, and we were reminiscing, and, I put some stuff up on Facebook about, a little tribute to him, what he meant to me, how he changed my life. It was a huge loss. It was just a huge loss for everyone. Everyone was stunned. It was like a major thing.
Yeah, the tributes that went out, the days after were amazing. The amount of love and tributes that went out all over the country, all over the world, is amazing. And this is a guitar player. I'd said this before on one of the other shows that he kind of crossed over between, you got your Holdsworth and you got your, Michael Shinkers, who we know.
Yeah.
But the general culture, the public doesn't know them. But Edward Van Halen had that rare thing where he was the guy who was really well known for being the guitar player. I mean, obviously, his marriage to Valerie Bertinelli kind of gave him some visibility in circles that he wasn't known for. But Beat It, obviously another thing that helped him become visible to everyone. And then of course, just that first album, the power of Eruption and the power of that album. It's world-changing album, and always will be. And yeah, man, I wanted to do this series to get to people like you who have these unique experiences, and we're kind of the source of a lot of the inspiration that I got, man. These tapes, man, like I said earlier, that Pasadena Civic tape, man, when I was a kid in the 90s, man, and I wanted to grind it out on my guitar and become great, man. You listen to that and you go, that's great. That's what's great.
Yeah, it was, man. That recording, that one specifically, you could hear how jazzed they are in the middle. Like, woo, woo, woo. I mean, they're just so excited. They're so happy. And even Roth is, he'd always say like little things in between the songs. He'd go, here's one off our first album. I've been waiting an awful long time to say, here's one off our first album. And he would say things like, well, when we first started playing here, there weren't too many people, but now it appears that things have changed. And he went into his, and it's like, wait, and the way Edward was playing and the harmonies, I was there at that show, and it was like a night and day compared to the other Civic shows that I'd seen them at. All the other shows, as I mentioned before, that room sounded horrible because it was so echoey and they were so damn loud. But for this farewell show, they had a whole professional sound system and mixer, and it was, clear as a bell in that room. Wow. And you could hear all the harmonies. Everything was in tune. Roth was in tune. The guitar was razor sharp. I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome.
So you were at the October 77 show.
Yeah, I was there.
Wow, man, that's I like to, sometimes when I put these together, I like to kind of center them on a show or something. I'm not sure what I title anything until I sit down and kind of like all the information comes together in the interview, and I kind of come to a conclusion on what we should call it. But that show is like, it is one of the premier things for all Van Halen fans. If you're a guitar player, every one of us knows about it. Knows that show.
Oh man, yeah, and we loved all the little things Dave would say. Me and my buddies that would listen to these tapes religiously. The funny thing about in that show, they played "Little Dreamer" for the first time. That was a song they wrote, right then during that album recording. And he goes, here's a song. This band here is the Little Dreamer, just like Angel. And that's like a joke because apparently, you may have heard this story, but Edward had accidentally played, because he was so excited about their album, he was hanging out with the guys in Angel, and whether maybe it was Punky Meadows or something. He said, "Hey, check this out." And those guys tried to scoop him, tried to like say, "Let's put out a version of You Really Got Me" before they do, and it was like they actually went in the studio to do it, and Warner Brothers put the kibosh on them. But Roth was so mad, he was like saying, "Yeah, the little dreamer, angel."
I didn't know that. I mean, I knew that they did try to do that, but I didn't know that was in the demo or in the tape you're talking about.
LA is a very competitive place, man. I mean, that's the other part of this whole story is that it's like this is the place everybody comes to try to make it, especially in the entertainment business. Sure. And that, in the 80s, it was, Van Halen kicked off a whole thing where every guitar player from around the world came to town with their band, and that was a major explosion. But even before that, with Van Halen, that's Hollywood that they were in. And it's like, there's so many people here trying to make it that it's like someone will steal it from you. It's like someone will backstab you. It's like some guy will try to take it away. You got to really want it bad and protect it and just keep hitting it.
Right. Yeah. I tell you what, that you really got me, man. When I first heard his version of it, that riff, that has become the thing that I test all my gear out to. That's the riff, man.
It's so awesome, and the tone, the guitar sound, that amp was just, God, it's like pure electricity.
When you were there at 5150, did you get to look around a lot of stuff, or did you said you got?
Yeah. Sometimes he would leave the room, and I thought, oh shit, there's probably cameras here. I better not like even get out of my seat. It's like, but I'm looking around and I see all his guitars. Other times we hung out in his house. I think the last time I was up there, he took me in the main house, which usually we'd only hang out in the studio, which is his house had like a big, long U-shaped drive. And at the bottom was the main house. And then if you keep going to the top of the hill, there was the studio and an office, which is the 5150. And then the road exits out of the street of Coldwater Canyon. Mm-hmm. So the last time I was up there, we met in the main house and we were hanging in his music room. He's got like a white piano in there and a cello and all his guitars hanging on the wall and a whole bunch of stuff. And then he's got this golf cart that instead of trying to walk up the hill, he takes his golf cart up there. So we rode in his golf cart, and it's like we watched a movie together, and his wife showed up. She's like looking at me like, who the fuck are you? Like I was like, hi, Janie. I go, we talked before on the phone. You helped me get into the Jimmy Kimmel show, remember? And she's like,
so what movie did you watch with Edward Van Halen?
Yeah, so what it was that I was watching these documentaries on that music channel. I think it's Palladia, is it called? Mm-hmm. And there was a documentary about Van Halen. It wasn't an authorized documentary, but there's this British production group and made documentaries about all these different classic rock groups. And I thought they did a really good job. And so I recorded it. And I told him about that. He goes, I didn't know anything about that. And he seemed like real interested in seeing it. So I said, I'll make a copy. He goes, yeah, do that, man. I want to see it. And I don't know if he was mad that they were like impinging on something, he was just very curious to see it. So I edited out all the commercials and made a DVD and brought it up there. And we watched the whole thing. And it told their whole story, not to anywhere that did like the quality that Greg Renoff did, but, in a very overview way, a very Reader's Digest version. They covered all that ground and they kind of just told, their story. And it was cool. It was a cool thing. And we sat down and watched the whole thing.
And what did he say? What did he think?
He goes, he was like, yeah, I was there, man. I lived that. And that same day I bought him two of Greg's book. I gave him 2 copies because I figured, he could give one to Al. And he said, he just kind of set him down. He goes, yeah, man, I don't have to read that. I lived it, But I think Greg said that a friend of his who was also in the house saw the books were in there. So, at least he knew that they got to him. I don't know if he ever read them. Maybe he did. I don't know if he was much of a reader. I don't even know. Couldn't tell you.
Right, right. That's interesting. Greg and I, of course, we've all talked about how, or at one point, another, that they'll do some sort of movie or documentary, or and there are little things. There's been a couple things that have come out that are pretty decent. Michael Anthony was on one that I saw recently, and it was pretty good. Good overview on Reels, which was a story of the band, more or less. Breaking the Band is what it was called, and very similar to what you're talking about. I think I saw the one you're talking about. Kind of
some of these documentaries I see, like there's ones about Leonard Skinner that are just awesome. Just like, obviously they had full permission to use all the songs, and the band was involved in the production. It's like tells the whole story. Like there's awesome documentaries, and I wish that something like that could be done for Van Halen, but I just think they're just way too guarded. And especially now that Ed's gone, I just don't think that'll ever happen.
Yeah,
another thing I wanted to expound on that you mentioned earlier about like Michael. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I just wanted to make a quick point because you said something earlier about people like Michael Schenker and Alan Holdsworth, who both great guitar players.
Sure.
There's a huge difference between Edward Van Halen as an artist and those guys. I mean, besides the fact that I think he's just an amazingly better guitar player, Holdsworth is a great technician and has an amazing style. And Edward completely thought that Holdsworth was better than him, but I think it's the other way around. But the main thing that I think as an artist, Edward wrote songs, like amazingly successful songs. Michael Schenker, as good of a guitar player as he is, he just wrote the same kind of block chord songs. His songs never really crossed that line into like huge potential, like Edward Van Halen. Edward Van Halen was a true composer, not just a technician and a performer.
Yeah, I agree. The Van Halen songbook is thick of the best of all time. I mean, it's like, when they would come out with an album, even when I discovered them, which first album I ended up getting was Diver Down because that was the current album at the time, but I was looking for Fair Warning. I just didn't know that's what I was looking for because I saw the video and thought, well, I don't know what the song name is, but the picture looks like the right picture on the back cover, so I bought the album. But yeah, as I went back through the catalog, you'd get the Rothisms in the songs, and you'd get the Edward little solo for that record, or the little instrumental parts. They had these little pieces that added up to this giant whole that made them so unique. And the songs, of course, were the big thing. The songs were just fantastic.
The songs were amazing, and you got to give credit to all four of them. I think each guy was just as important as the other. Despite all the back and forth that's come out, Michael Anthony was essential to that band just as much as Alex and Dave and Edward were. It's like the Beatles. It's like you can't take one guy away and expect it to be the same. It's like Van Halen there was no slacker in there. There was no like also ran. His voice made it. And David Lee Roth, as much as he fell down at the end, he was an amazing performer and songwriter, and he made that stuff come alive. Those compositions that were so good that Edward wrote were brought to life by Dave, and Dave was a 50-50 writer. So it's like you got to respect that, and I do for sure.
Yeah, Roth's contribution lyrically and melodically, like on that last album, Different Kind of Truth. I still thought that it was just like what I remembered, from the early albums. He just had that together. They're just that, and that's what they are. And you hear it and you go, that's them. That's these guys. That's what they sound like. It's an amazing album, and I'm so glad that you were on so we could talk about it. Because these are probably the untold stories, man. That I don't know, how else we're going to tell them without having to get the lawyers involved.
I figured, I saw Craig and what a great job he did and you did with the whole production. I just thought, I should get my stuff out there too, because, we're all getting old and eventually, we're all going to fade away and this stuff will live forever. And, it should all be told.
Exactly.
So
That's what I think about my YouTube channel, man. When I'm gone, it's still here, and as long as they keep it out there, it'll be out there for who knows how
it'll
long.
be forever. Yeah, that's one of the great things about the internet. I mean, the internet has a lot of bad things, but one of the great things is that something good will live forever and be freely accessible to anyone around the world at any time.
Yeah, I have a
And
couple. I have people from up from Europe and Italy, and that are always watching these, and it just blows my mind that how his influence reached across the world, and they have people, that are just so into this program because they just want more. They want to know more. We know so much
yeah,
about him, yet, but everybody wants to know more about him. I want to know more about him.
yeah. Well, I mean, just the fact that we're that into it tells you how valuable he was and how valuable his art was.
I think about that, like he named his son Wolfgang after Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and I just think if we could go back and we had an interview with Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, how cool that would be to still access that today. To have that,
Yeah, I mean, that would be something else. I mean, who knows what his personality was really like? You think about that movie that came out, which was pretty funny,
right,
and who knows if that was accurate or not. I don't know.
It's somewhat accurate from what I know, but yeah, and the other thing was too. I don't know if you saw this, but this is a very cool thing. It's kind of way out there in the future. But ABBA last week or 2 weeks ago, they did that virtual reality show where they came back as avatars. Did you see that?
I didn't see it, but I heard about that and I saw it announced.
I had a friend, one of my guests on episode 3, was at it in Europe.
Oh wow!
Phil Schaus is a guitar player for Accept right now, and he's over there with them touring. And he went to it, and I saw some clips of this thing, and you could not tell they weren't real. It was freaky.
That's a futuristic thing, and maybe they can make some people come back to life. I saw a Queen concert when I was in Europe. I was traveling, and they played, and they had that new guy Adam,
Yep.
who is not Freddie Mercury for sure in any stretch of the form, but he's entertaining. But then all of a sudden on the screen they had the real Freddie Mercury, like 100 feet high, and he's singing the song that we're hearing in the. And so it's like, well, he's still alive with technology. So there you go. It can be done.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that. You could actually go back and get a Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and repopulate him into a digital form, and there he is. You know what I'm saying? You could actually kind of,
Wow.
When we were kids, you'd go to Disney, you'd go to the Hall of Presidents, right? And you'd have these animatronic faces that looked pretty convincing. But now this has become digital, and it's like, wow, the things that we're going to be able to experience, through technology. After seeing this, if you watch any clips of it, just go on YouTube and look for a clip of ABBA on their opening show of this thing, and it'll blow your mind. They've integrated.
I'll check it out.
They've integrated the screens that they use for your normal screens that you would see people on. They put them up, and what happens is it's just like you're at a regular show. They appear on the screens, and the angles and everything are matched, so it literally looks like you're at a regular show watching a performer down here appear.
Wow. And of course they're younger too, right?
Right, they're all at their prime 20-something years old. So there
you go. That's a dream come true for them.
What blew me away was when they appeared. They appeared at the end of the first show. At this show,
the real people,
the real ABBA came out, and of course they're with canes and stuff now, right? You had just seen them in their prime, and I was like, this is literally like time travel happening right now. It's so strange, but maybe Edward Van Halen and Van Halen can somehow come back in that way, or somehow that we can relive it again in the way that we'd never thought.
As a super fan like you are, I mean, we had all our own fantasies about what we would like to invent, and some of the inventions or fantasies we had were that we would have footage from back in the day, like in Pasadena, and we'd be able to like be there at a backyard party or a civic gig with 5 cameras going in and just seeing them and hearing them at that point. I had that kind of fantasy going, And one of the other ideas was that we were going to make a movie about two kids that were just like going to see Van Halen and the whole process and what we lived through as high schoolers and what that was like, but those are just a bunch of pipe dreams. But, as a big fan, you think about all that stuff comes into your head.
Well, those visions are what become reality a lot of times. I had the really weird opportunity and rare opportunity to sit down with Jimi Hendrix's sister. And it happened to be at NAMM, and I had always wanted to meet her because I had gone to a thing she was at in Nashville, and I almost had a chance to talk to her, but I didn't. And then I went to NAMM, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this lady and this man comes, and they asked if they could sit down next to me because there's no other room. And I look over, and it's Jimi Hendrix, right? So I said to her, I go, I've always wanted to ask you a question. Do you mind? So for 30 minutes, I talked to Jimi Hendrix about his legacy and why they haven't released the rights to the music, sync with movies, etc., etc. She just really said that they hadn't really come upon the right thing for them that they felt good about yet, and that they, of course, were doing all the documentary work they were already doing. So
yeah, I mean that's a whole other story about exploitation and bad music business. I mean, Hendrix got so ripped off by so many people that by the time he died, it's like, I don't think he had any money from that. And it's like, there was all these people robbing him. And back in the 80s, I was hired to do an instructional video about Jimi Hendrix. And I did a bunch of his licks, and they sold this tape where I'm showing how to play this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. But they wouldn't allow, it's like the Hendrix, at that point, the people that owned his music and his copyright were totally controlling it. And it's like I couldn't earn a royalty because they had rights to everything. And, it's like just a whole bunch of, starting from Mike Jeffries, who was his last manager, who, some people say murdered him. There's all kinds of speculation. Sure. To all these other producers that took his unfinished work and then finished it themselves with new musicians and put that out and without anyone's permission, and then other ones and other ones and other ones. It's like we were saying earlier, the music business is just one big ripoff for artists, and it's, that part's sad, but the love of the music and the performance and the way it makes you feel and hair standing up and all that, that's all that really counts. And that's why I got into the recording end of it, because the business part of it just, it's like, right. I couldn't take it.
And as you said, Edward and Alex didn't want that either. That's not something that they wanted anything.
Right, because they were true musicians. And, unlike someone like Sammy Hagar, who was, had graduated to different levels of awareness, they were still tried and true musicians, and that's all that really mattered.
To them, yeah. And why they didn't probably, like you said, he didn't even have this material you brought. I mean, you would have thought his son or, because Wolfgang's a big fan of his dad, and I've always thought that Wolfgang had a pretty good handle on his dad's.
Well, from what I saw when I was up in the room there, you saw where Wolfgang had made this like blackboard, and he was writing down all these different song titles and what they'd found, and he was basically getting stuff off the internet and seeing who had the better copy, and they were going through they were checking off which, how good of a copy. And so by the time I got some of these select tapes to them, they were super jazzed because they'd found the best copy, and that's great. But, I thought it was just going to be used as a guide to rewrite the song and, make something new out of it. But,
so Wolfgang, your impression, or what do you know about Wolfgang's involvement with his father when they get to these details on like different kind of truth? I mean, it was like his dad filtered everything through.
Yeah, it's like I saw Wolfie up there. He introduced me to him. They were rehearsing one time. I saw the three of them go in there. I have different feelings about Wolfgang. I like his new solo record. I think that's really well done. Great production, right? Well executed. It's like the fact that he replaced Michael Anthony. As a fan, it offends me because Michael Anthony is Michael Anthony. but I understand from Ed and Al's perspective, especially Ed. They got their feelings hurt by Michael, and it's like they felt betrayed by the fact that I think, basically they were sort of fucking off and not doing anything, and Michael got bored, and Sammy asked him to go do some stuff, and he had a lot of fun with Sammy. So he became closer to Sammy, and they felt like, wait a second, you're our friend, this, and they got jealous and they got mad, and that's basically why they replaced him with Wolfie. And Wolfie, had a lot of big shoes to fill there. It's like he definitely pulled it off. He learned how to sing those harmonies, and he got pretty good. But as a true fan, it's like, I can't even listen to Sammy Hagar Van Halen because I knew so well the David Lee Roth Van Halen. So it's hard for me to accept him on that level. I admire him as what he's done. He had big shoes to fill. And now he's in charge of his dad's legacy, I guess. I don't know. Nothing really has come out yet.
His
brother, we'll see.
Him, his brother, and Matt. So
Yeah. And I met Matt and dealt with Matt a bunch. Matt's a cool guy, and Matt had helped Edward quite a bit with the selling of all those different branded products, and he's a cool guy. He's going to help out because they need help. They need help to see the legacy handled correctly.
Yeah, and they have, like we've talked about, been very tight about every little thing, and that used to be the real. I mean, those videos, that even the Unchained video, we always wanted some kind of professional grade version of that to come out just as a box set piece, or just because I've got it on VHS still. I would like to have something that's like as good as you can get. It was on film. So it's got to be.
Apparently, there's a lot of video that's unreleased, and I started suggesting things to Al and Ed when I got wind that they were going to try to release the bootlegs. I was thinking, well, how about a package that's not just audio, but some kind of multimedia thing with unseen footage, and that'll kind of make the product more exciting. And like they didn't agree.
Really? They didn't agree with that?
No.
Wow.
And, he just,
that's crazy.
Who am I?
Well, no, I'm not, no, I mean, I just think that, at least from my perspective, that's what I would want. I mean, I would just love to have a pristine version of it, instead of my Don Kirshner's from whenever the heck it was, copy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of unreleased footage. I think the US Festival, there was all kinds of really well done footage that only a little bit of it came out. And there's other concerts, other shows where there is somewhere a bunch of professional grade concert footage of Van Halen.
Even that 8mm that the guy had in '78, the one from in Fresno. I mean, what a killer.
It's a great show, but that's a pretty poor quality video.
And it's like it's been getting better and better and better over the years. Like he's starting to move it a little bit better quality every year, and I think it's probably as far as it's going to go now. But yeah, man, all that stuff was just, it was so important to so many people. I mean, when they released the guitar, the Unchained guitar with that pattern, he knew that guitar was well known from the video, and why else would you put it out? I mean, if you're not going to sell anything. So somebody knew that. I mean, I know Wolfgang knew that. I mean, Wolfgang knows. People have come to Wolfgang and say, why haven't these videos come out? Where's the show? And he would go back to his dad, and his dad was always saying, there doesn't exist. There's only those three.
Wolfie's already made a lot of noise online about people that are, making all these comments like, why don't you perform more Van Halen stuff? Why don't you do this? And, that's what we want to hear. And he's like, fuck you. That's my dad, and that's them. And this is me now, and he's got a point, but so do the fans too, so it's like, it's a weird little standoff. And, Wolfie has yet to release something that's going to bridge that gap between the legacy of Van Halen and what role he has in that, and his own personal venture. It's like we're yet to see what's going to pan out. He's done a pretty cool solo album, but nothing Van Halen related. So, it's early. We'll see.
Well, I would say, the product line at EVH, would be the first. He's got a new product, a new guitar he's developed that he's got coming out, that he's working on. That's sort of a little bridge between him and his father. Of course, they're coming out with new products all the time. He said at some point, he said that he has had 5 years planned out already before his passing for product line. So EVH Gear will continue to release stuff that they had talked about with him for
Yeah.
a few more years.
Ed was pretty proud of that stuff. One of those last visits when I was in the house I was telling you about, he was showing me a lot of the new little mini heads they had, and he was playing a little bit and saying, check this one out. And then he showed me this other thing that Fender had approached him with. It was like a kind of like a Pro Tools plug-in amp simulator. And they had worked out a way to simulate the sound of his first album, Plexiglass Head. And he wanted, he was trying to show me that. So he was pretty happy about that stuff.
You know what?
There's
a picture, though. There's pictures of that software and him playing through
it. Yeah.
Have you seen
so
those?
He was jazzed about some of his, the developments up towards the end there. But the jazz that he was feeling about the products and the technology thing that were creating new excitement about him and his stuff were offset by the frustration and disappointment he had because of David Lee Roth and how Roth didn't want to do anything new and, was embarrassing them in the live concerts. And so it was a mixed bag for him.
Yeah. What did he say, or I mean, what can you enlighten me about Roth's reason for being so? Is it just their button heads, or they didn't see things eye to eye on the material, or Roth didn't think it was worth doing?
No, I mean, it goes towards, I mean, I can give you my speculations and I can tell you things that Ed said, but Ed was speculating as well. It's like we were both saying stuff like, something happened to Dave. It's like he used to be better. You can listen to those old tapes and you can hear that he was like just focused. He was in tune a lot more in the early days and on time too. It's like he just was a way better performer. And then even when he went solo and had the band with Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan, that was great stuff. That was like same quality level competing. He was a total on top of it guy. And then at some point, like the next solo album after Sheen and Vai had left, boom, it's like something happened to Roth. I said, maybe he had a stroke, maybe something, physical, mental had happened to him. And then Ed said, yeah, maybe he had a stroke. And then Al goes, no, because people that have stroke, like half their face is like coming down. I don't think that's it. But I said, I don't know. It's such a drastic change. It's like, how can you be like at this level of performer and then all of a sudden not only lose your pitch, but your timing as well? So I don't know. I mean, I don't want a bad rap either. But
yeah. I know, but I see what you're saying because, I saw him in 07, 08, and I thought that was me and my buddy were there. That was on episode 3, Phil. And we remarked how all of a sudden he seemed like he straightened up, like he got really on the melodies, on his pitch, and we were like speculating on whether that the brothers and him had a discussion, and or maybe he just felt the pressure of being great and came out and killed it.
Yeah, that's a good point because there was some shows towards the end where Roth was really much more together. So it could be that he was like high a bunch of times and just couldn't pull it together because he was just fucked up. So that could be it. So we were just all guessing. Ed and Al were guessing as well. They, the truth of the matter is they were never really friends with David Lee Roth. They were business partners and they admired each other, but they were scared of him always from the beginning to the end. He was
scared like.
They were scared of it because he was just kind of like his personality, it's like
unpredictable,
and you didn't know what he was going to do next. He was like a wild card, and they they were always on guard. And it's not like they hung out together as friends, as bros. They didn't go out traveling together or, go hang out drinking or anything like that. They weren't that way. They didn't grow up that way. I mean, Roth was a rich kid, and he had his own circle of people. And the Van Halens had their own circle of people. That never changed.
Right.
So there's that factor.
Yeah, I noticed that when I went to Pasadena, went to Los Lunas, and then went to Roth's house over on Bradford. You're talking about they're very close, in distance, but in their monetary situations were totally different.
Socioeconomic difference. Yeah, it's a different culture. Different culture.
Amazing, really, and how it all came together and turned out to be Van Halen is just one of the greatest stories of all time that will need to be told, and somebody's going to figure out a way to do it, and we're telling it right now. We're telling what we can.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job, and I really looked up to and admired what I saw that you did with Craig, and I was looking at some of your other ones, and I hope that this can join all of those, and I think you're doing a great service to all the fans around the world to put these kind of stories together and do it in such a great documentarian way so that it can live on and that the fans that from this point forward will be able to understand better what's behind what they love.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on here, Michael. And, every time I get like Craig and then you got in touch with me and then somebody else will get in touch with me, I get such great momentum from just having people on it that are telling these great stories because other people want to come forward and tell theirs, and it just keeps this train rolling, and I'm just gonna do what I can to keep it going and keep their legacy, uncovering things about them and giving people something to keep being inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you're a big fan because I saw some videos of your bands and what you do.
I'm the most insane fan. Did you see last night's post?
I didn't see that, but I saw some others, and I'm like, you do well out here if you were in LA.
Thanks, man. Well, here's a funny story for you. Last night, well, my wife, I have this Van Halen necklace, right? And my buddy is a bass player and an engineer, and he's got into 3D printing, right? And the Van Halen necklace, of course, is an iconic piece, right? And there's a way that you can print it 3D, which makes it plastic.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Plastic. Yeah. I know. But anyway, my buddy was messing around with it, and he came up with a bigger one because you can scale it up. And my wife says, because she knows how, she lives with me, so she knows my Van Halen love is like, she says, "You're this." And I go, "What does that mean?" She goes, "Obsessed with Eddie Van Halen." And so she goes, "You need one. You need a Van Halen necklace that is as big as Flava Flav's clock." Flava Flav always wore a clock.
Oh yeah, big one.
All right, so my birthday was last week, and my bass player, my wife, got on the side and decided they were going to make me one as big as his clock.
That's awesome.
So last night they unveiled it at the show, and I have it with me right here. You ready for this? The biggest Van Halen necklace on planet Earth now exists.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
And it hangs around my neck.
Oh yeah.
It's a little large, right?
You can start rapping right now.
Right. Check it out. It is as big as Flava Flav's clock. And anyway,
that's beautiful.
They put that on my neck last night, and I wore that during the show. Because I just wanted people to know that I am the super fan of all super fans. And I have the biggest Van Halen necklace ever made.
I love it. That's very cool and a very, very beautiful thing to do for you.
So, man, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you want to talk about that you didn't get to talk about? Or
I think I covered it. Let me just take a quick look on my notes here because I know I wanted to give you everything that I have for posterity.
Yes, sir.
I think I did mention it. I mean, the fact that they wanted to put out GOLVH, as I called that original tape that I first got, the fact that they wanted to make that a record and they even made all these efforts to do that was a touching thing for me. but I think I mentioned that. You know, we didn't talk much about their original bass player, Mark Stone, but you know, they were kind of a different band with him. They were just real quick. Mark Stone was just the local guy, and after he got put out of Van Halen, he didn't move anywhere. He didn't change anything. He worked as a carpenter, lived up in Sierra Madre. Mm-hmm. I got in touch with him and asked him to come over to my studio after I had put together my collection, and I wanted to hear his stories. I was interviewing him, but not the way you do. Mm-hmm. And he had all the stories he was telling me. He was telling me about, like, we were listening to those tapes, and he was telling me about what that song's called, and you know what the story was with that. And they used to play. They were like a sort of like a fusion band, like a metal. What I want to call progressive. They were like a progressive metal band with Mark Stone. They all these intricate riffs, and they were playing covers by Captain Beyond, you know, who's a weird group. And you probably heard the story about the skip in the record.
Yeah.
Did you hear it?
Craig said that, yeah.
He told that story, you know, and I heard that. And then he showed me this picture he carried around in his wallet. He had this picture that he just always had on him. There's the three of them in one of those photo booth things you can do down at the store. And they're all three in matching overalls, like denim overalls with no shirt on underneath. And they all have the same hair, like kinky, long, straight hair, all three of them. And they're all together as like the Three Musketeers of bros. And that's kind of how they were. He was an awesome bass player, but, you know, they were much more ambitious than him. And I think that's where the split. I mean, there's all these different little stories about why he got kicked out, but I think it just came down to ambition.
Yeah, Mark said that in that documentary that Jeff did, where he kind of, you know, he just said, you know, that they were just more driven or whatever than he was.
Yeah, they were like super serious. I mean, they were like practicing all the time, and it's like no joking. Like,
yeah, they had said that
European.
They were gonna make it or break it, man. That's what they've always said. They always said back then, you know. So that they were something else in that way.
Right. And also, Mark Stone co-wrote a bunch of songs that he never got credit for. You know, like In a Simple Rhyme, Take Your Whiskey Home. I think another one as well. Ed told me that he wrote like half of the song in the riffs and put it together.
Wow!
But he didn't get it.
Yeah, that's wild, man. It's so cool that Edward had, you know, confided with you on certain, you know, that's the thing that I was telling Craig, you know, guys like me, there's thousands of us, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, that would just love to have a night with Edward to sit down and ask him all the little details that you just wanted to know, you know, like just anything small, you know, that you just.
You know, when I was there in the midst of what you're talking about, there was a part of me that felt like I was riding on the outside of an airplane and it was going to fucking throw me off at any second. I was telling my friend, I had this buddy named Jay, and we're like, you know, total Van Halen fanatics, and we would listen to these tapes for years and years. And he knew Matt, and, you know, I told him about the time when I went up there. And he told Matt this story too, because they were both laughing at me, that when I first went in to visit, Ed was being so cool to me, but he would walk out of the room. And I thought, you know, if I said the wrong thing at all, he would probably just not even respond. He would just walk out of the room. And the next thing you know, Matt would come in and go, "Hey, man, you're out of here." It's like something I would just, you know, I was afraid that was going to happen. That, you know, it's like I could say the wrong thing and, but of course that didn't. But that's just how you feel, you know, as a super fan who's been lucky enough to be gifted with this situation. You know, how do you ride it through?
Yeah, you don't want to mess up. You
don't want to mess up. You know? So you know, I was, but at the same time, Ed was so real and so sincere. So you just felt like you could say whatever you wanted. You know, you didn't have to like be on guard and like, oh, I don't want to offend this guy. You know, so you know, we just talk shit. You know, it's like he was ragging on Dave or Michael or Sammy, and you know, or this guy, or you know, or something in the world, or some business thing. just to shoot the shit like you would with any person anywhere, you know.
Right.
And he hung out with other people. He's telling me he's hanging out with George Lopez, that comedian.
Yep.
And they would play golf together. He said he had fun doing that. He had fun going out with Al on race cars. They had these race cars. They would go out to the track, and there's Porsches and other ones. He did that with motorcycles when he was younger. So he's like a regular guy.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the funny stories on my channel is there's a guy that I'm friends with that plays with Gene Simmons in his solo band. And Edward, when they were looking for a singer after Sharon, he ran into him at the gas station down at the corner by Ralph's down the hill from his house. And he talked to him, and Edward said he asked him if he found a singer, and he said no. He said, well, I'm a singer. And he goes, well, you got something? And he goes, yeah, but it's in my apartment across the street over here. And he goes, okay. So he said, he followed me over to my apartment. We hung out for an hour. He didn't even know me, you know. He said I only knew Niels Lozauer, and that was my only contact. And he said he came over to my house and hung out with me and listened to my stuff. And he said he didn't have to do that, but he did.
Yeah. Sometimes that's just the way life will hand you a little gift, you know.
It's quite a gift, man.
If you love something that comes from love. If you love something so much like this music or this artist, your energy can pull that into your life.
Yeah. I know that whole concept, of attracting things, like the whole thing.
Law of attraction.
Yeah, law of attraction. I swear though that with Van Halen that happened for me with the thing at the Smithsonian. I couldn't have gotten luckier to have found out about it and then somehow found the tickets. It was free. I flew there. I got to meet him finally, and it was everything that I dreamed of him being like. Like when I met him, he was just so warm, and like you said, you just he put you at ease.
Right. And I think you were lucky as I was lucky to meet him and become closer to him towards this last stage of his life when he was clear-headed and able to be like a more mature person, because as we were talking about earlier, he went through periods where he was like, not mentally balanced, and, he probably wasn't a person you'd want to approach at all at that time.
Sure. And exactly. That's how I felt. I felt like, I almost met him in 91, I think it was. Craig and I talked about that in there at NAMM, and he came over to shake everybody's hand, and I couldn't shake his hand. I was just literally so starstruck. And then it took, 25, 30 years before this happened. But when it did happen, it was just as I had imagined it in my head. It was weird.
That reminds me of a funny story that early on I was mentioning about getting in backstage and the whole art of doing that. There was a time when Van Halen, when Eddie was still married to Valerie, this was back in probably late 80s, maybe. Yeah. They had a house up in Malibu, like in the Broad Beach area, it's called, which is like super multi-million-dollar homes, right? So I don't know how long they lived there or whatever, but we knew he lived there. So anyway, he was producing this band called Private Life. Is these two chicks, and I think they were friends of Valerie's or something, and they were pretty good. I saw them play. And anyway, they were putting on a show at this club called the Trankets Club, right off of PCH, way up there in Malibu, like North Malibu, way up there. Mm-hmm. So we heard that this was going to go down, and I went up there, and came up with some buddies and girlfriend and everything. And Carmine was there, of course. He always tracks down these big rock star to-dos, and I saw him there inside. Anyway, so we're waiting to see if Edward Van Halen's going to show up. First, that band Private Life played, and then they said he was going to come up as a guest star towards the end, right? So there's all these people outside lined up, and they're trying to get in, and they're not letting in people. And so I knew the move to make would be to go to the kitchen. That's an insider move. Mm-hmm. So I went around to the kitchen, walked in there, and who was in there? Klaus Meine, Rudolf Schenker, and Matthias Jabs standing there kind of waiting around for Edward, right? Yeah. And I walked up to them, and I was like, oh, man, we started talking rock and roll, and we started talking records and all kinds of shit. I was having, much more fun than I would even think if I ran into Ed, because I'm talking to guys that I totally, these European rock stars. Right. And next thing I feel a big hand on my shoulder like this. I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting thrown out. That's it. I'm out of here. I'm in the kitchen. I'm not even supposed to be in here. But the hand on my shoulder was Edward. And so I turned around and he like reaches out to shake my hand. He goes, hi, I'm Edward. And I like, before I could say anything, he just with the same handshake brushes me to the side, just like pushes me out of the way. And he goes, so Klaus, so he's, in other words, like you're in the way of me talking to Klaus and Rudolph. So I was like, okay, I know my place. I'm out of here.
Wow, man. That's wild, isn't it? It's crazy life, man. Crazy life. You had a great story, man. Thanks for coming on. And do me a favor and send me those photos so I can integrate all that stuff that you've got there.
Absolutely. I'll send you a bunch of stuff. And if you think of things, that you need, and I didn't send it to you, just let me know.
Okay. You said you're in Huntington Beach, huh?
Yeah.
So, you know what? Do you know Eric Dover?
Eric Dover?
Yeah.
No. It sounds vaguely familiar.
You know Ponchos and Charlie's there?
What in Charlie's?
Isn't there a place called Ponchos and Charlie's there? Or is it Huntington Beach?
Oh yeah. I have heard of that. Yeah, Mexican restaurant.
Yeah. He was like they played there a lot as a house musician. But he was the guy who sang at Edward's backyard party when he had that big backyard party in 2006. He played with Slash.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He was a singer in Slash's Snake Pit, the first version.
Oh, all right, yeah. I got to be friends with Slash too.
Yeah, he's real close to Slash, and he had some crazy stories about that night, and I grew up with him. He's from Birmingham.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But I came out to Huntington Beach one time to see him play, and we went to Ponchos and Charlie's to see him play. So I've been in your neck of the woods.
Hey, if you ever come out here again, man, let me know and we'll hook up. I'll show you around.
Yeah, man, I'm out there. I usually come out there for NAMM when they probably will flip NAMM back to I imagine winter again at some point.
Yeah, I went to this one. I just went one day. It was not the usual NAMM show, so I could only really take it for a day. It was like half full. Yeah. That's
what they said. It was a day there today. I mean, this time. So hopefully it'll recover and they can get back get back to normal. So I'll definitely be back out there. I've got a guy I work with, a dealer who does high-end boutique guitars like Lux Tone and the guy that left Paul Reed Smith, Nags, Joseph Nags. And so I work with him, but I don't work with him. He's a friend of mine, and I go out with him. Or NAMM buddies. So, we'll be out there, I'm sure. So I'll get in touch with you, for sure. And, Craig and I have talked about Bro and visiting Bro. So,
visit Bro. Bro's a funny guy. I love Bro.
So maybe
I'll become.
Yeah, when I come out, we'll all go see Bro. How about that?
I'm in. Count me in.
All right, man. Thank you so much for your time, brother. And I'll be in touch with you to get the details on the photos and whatever we want to integrate. And I'll get it out there as soon as I can get it out there. But I like to take my time to put it together like I did with Craig. So I
have all the faith that you're going to do a great job as I've already seen you do already.
Well, thank you very much for that, man. Thanks for being on. Thanks for telling some incredible stories on Van Halen stories, man. And, anything you need anytime, you let me know and I'll try to help you. And, when I'm out there, I'll try to look you up.
Absolutely.
That'd
be great, Jeff.
Thanks for spending your evening with me, man. And I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, buddy. Good night.